Hey, Bob Strakele here.
So look at me.
Hi. Bob Strakele, front of house production for Awolnation, and we are at the Sound Academy in Toronto. During the day, I'm kind of like just front of house guy, and I oversee all the labor and the production needs, and most of the production stuff I try and get done in advance, or I work on after sound check or after doors when I can have a quiet place to work, you know. But yeah, during the day it's just load in, get everything in and up and working, and just try and concentrate on the sound side of things. It's a pretty, production-wise, it's pretty easy because we're on tour now. We know what we need. We bring all our own stuff with us, lighting-wise, and everything we need for audio, with the exception of the PA at this point. Cool. We bring in, you know, full monitor system, wedges, side fills, drum subs, all our own mics, stands, XLRs, you know, pretty much everything. We just need power and a PA, and we're good to go. So people tend to like it.
You've been getting some good rigs lately.
Yeah, I mean the rooms that we've been playing kind of dictate. You know, we've been playing this kind of size room, so it's usually something hefty enough for us to. It's a lot of low-end information in this show, so a good sub and a properly tuned sub is kind of crucial. Have
you had issues where like there hasn't been enough sub?
Yeah, but it's kind of a personal, you know, it's like if it doesn't go away, people don't notice it. You know what I mean? If people get used to what they're hearing all day, and just because of our opening bands they're just standard acoustic instruments pretty much, where we have a lot of MPCs and sample-based stuff that goes super, super low. So even if it might be a little bit sub-late, it tends to come out, you know.
The subby stuff, is that ever like a problem? Like, wait.
Yeah, it was at first. I noticed when we were getting to a lot of festivals that I was running out of headroom, but I was running out of headroom in the system, but I wasn't necessarily as loud as everybody else, because of the information I'm being handed is so low end and extremely high end heavy that you start just going into compression on the system, because the amps are trying to reproduce a 16K sound. So now I just kind of like, I high pass everything to 20 and I low pass it to like 12K, and I'm cruising. You still, you know, you're not going to hear that super uber toppy shit when you're in a packed room. So I'd rather make it all a bit punchier and louder and not hurt anything. You know what I mean?
What would you say is the most like challenging part about touring or like mixing this band, other than all the rest?
Yeah, I mean, frequency separation took me a while to figure out, because there's a lot of kind of droney parts and they're all fairly heavily distorted. So you'll have your drummer, your bass player, your keyboard player, and your guitar player hanging on the same exact note. And it's like, well, how can I tell when I'm looking at the stage? I want to hear what I'm seeing, you know what I mean? So that was kind of a bit tricky. We got around that by adding some clean DIs in front of the pedal boards, so that I get the sound of the guitar, and or the bass guitar really, before it goes all through the pedals. Just getting some string articulation, because if you look at the waveform, it's just like, just flat, you know, it's just so limited. So I do a couple things like that, try and spread the guitar and the distorted bass a little bit off center, and I have the clean bass right up the middle. But yeah, I mean, the hardest thing for me every day is the start of the show, just because it tends to get really loud in here with the audience. The song we've been starting with is kind of a lower vocal register, and he's not completely warmed up yet, so trying to push him a little bit harder than I would normally have to. But usually by the second song, I'm on autopilot, you know, just having fun with effects. There's a lot of effects cues, and yeah.
Maybe touch on that. Like, what kind of effects are you using?
A lot of weird delays. So on this desk I've got the this dual engine delay, so I've got basically my one tap does a quarter note and a 16th note at the same time, returning to a bunch of different channels. So I mult it off a bit, and the way it returns is my quarter notes on its own return. The 16th note returns, but it's got a super long feedback on it. It basically goes kind of forever. Then I have another quarter note delay that does not go to the left right. It just goes to a gated reverb. So what you're hearing is you get this nice kind of underlying rhythm to the vocal. It's not a very present delay because the delay is going to a reverb, and then that's what you're hearing. But it just adds, it just fills out the vocals nicely. You know what I mean? So you're, instead of a hey, hey, you're hearing hey, ha. You're just hearing an airy kind of delay where you don't really notice it, but it's super nice on songs that have a lot of space because it just carries the vocal notes out. You know what I mean?
That's so cool. I've never heard of anybody who does that.
Yeah, it's.
Did you figure that out on your own, or?
Yeah, I figured it out. I've done it before this band, but some band I was working for had a very distinct delay cue, and it was the delay return sounded like it was underwater. So that was my way of, without having any extra outboard gear and doing it right in the desk. I'm like, oh, I just won't send that to the PA. I'll just send it to something else. Mangle it a little bit more and then return it, you know?
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'd steal that.
Yeah, do it.
That's awesome.
I wasn't the first one to do it, that's for sure.
So when it comes to, like, is there anything else you use other than just the reverbs? Or like
yeah. Pitch, going 10 cents up and down with a bit of a pre-delay, and then about 25% feedback, so it just, again, it just carries it out a bit. And that almost acts as its own kind of slap delay because you're hearing the vocal first, and then I got a fairly long pre-delay on it, so the effect doesn't come in until after the initial hit of the word comes through. That I don't touch at all during the show. I just kind of forget about it. I just ride the level. Then we go into the Alive setting on the 780, which is a gated reverb, which sounds like this. That's my main snare. Under that is a little bit more spicy, just a normal tail. That's my toms, but I put that on the snare as well. This is my vocal verb, just kind of quick.
real tight.
Yep. And then the delay, and then I was using the dynamic EQ up until a couple days ago. I don't know, I just bypassed it for some reason, and it was like, whoa, I had so much more headroom. I don't know if it doesn't make up the gain when you're doing serious moves on it. So I just put this across my vocal group, and it seems to be working really good. It's been a lot easier to just fine tune the curve instead of only having 6 bands to work on, you know, with the parametric. And then, yeah, that's it for effects.
Cool.
Nothing external at all. No outboard. I mean, I might do it in the future, but I love this thing, you know, everything on it works good. All the compressors work great. They get raunchy enough for what I like to do, you know. Any bus can do anything on this desk pretty much, so my first 8 are subgroups. This is a drum group, which is just kick, snare, my toms, and we have this mic that's kind of pointed side snare. It's in between the kick and the rack tom, or kick and the floor tom, pointed at the side of the snare, and that I just totally crush. So kick, snare, what we call the crotch mic, and the toms go through this group, no EQ, 2-to-1 ratio, and I just really fast release, just try and get it to distort. 3 and 4 is all my cymbals, which I smash pretty hard too, long release, so you get a whoosh, it just holds just adds sustain basically. 3 and 4 are my keys, so basically I got, out of Kenny's world, I've got how many channels do I have of him? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I got about 16 channels of stuff, kind of in that keyboard world. So just so they all don't step on each other, I just send them all to the same group and limit it pretty hard. Well, it's a hard ratio, but it only goes about 1 or 2 dB into it. And then last one is vocals, which I could have mono, but I have stereo for some reason, and it's just my center vocal. And then with that chain is basically his vocal. This is my tuning for the actual microphone. Then that goes to here, and this is my feedback prevention EQ, basically. So
on the group?
On the group. So I leave the channel sounding the way I like the mic to sound. I do all this I just literally stand up there with my iPad, and I know how high I got to get. I know I need +8 at certain songs to get to where I need to be. So I get it up to +8. I tune the fills, I tune the PA in an empty room. 9 times out of 10, I can put it all back, or put most of it back. But you know, it's my fear is like it to totally go wrong in the first song, and then it just messes me up. And then I have the graphic inserted on that on top of it. So there's quite a bit of stuff going on, but iPad's the Mixtender 2 app, so it's, you know, I just got a little Airport Express over here. You assign an IP address on both ends, turn it on at the console, and then you get control of everything. So this is what I spend most of my time on in the afternoon. Again, I can, you know, turn everything on and off. I can pretty much adjust any parameter except for effects. So I'll walk around the whole venue, make sure, you know, like we just added delays back there, make sure they're in time and voiced right. We bring our own front fills, so I tend to spend a little bit of time with pink noise just under the PA and the front fill and make sure they're sounding like a cohesive, you know, like today, they're 2 products. You know, we got L Acoustics front fills and a D&B system, so you just kind of voice them so that they don't sound weird when you're going from zone to zone. And then if it's not too crazy, or I have a path to walk around, once I get comfortable, I'll take the iPad out during the show, and I'll get up into the barricade and make sure the vocal's intelligible up there, and just do a quick walk around, make sure I'm not standing in a really weird spot that's I'm the only person hearing what I'm hearing. You know, sometimes front of house is against a bar or some sort of bass trap, and you're just like, oh, it's so sub heavy, and you turn it down, and then you walk around and you're like, oh no, it's not. But yeah, this is a great app. It's easy to use. It's relatively stable. And then my computer is, I record every night. I just send a left, right. I have a record matrix that's pre all my EQ, so no matter what I do, it won't affect my record, and it's got audience mics, and audience mics are compressed fairly hard, so when they're hearing the PA, they're down, and then when the PA lifts, the compressor lifts with it, so it's kind of an automatic audience fader, you know. And then at the same time, I also take a smart, depending on what I'm concerned with at the day. Today it's just a smart off my left, right. Sometimes it's an RTA. Sometimes it's off my vocal group. So if I know I'm going to have a hard time with feedback or something, I'll take my vocal group output, put it in smart with like a 3-second peak hold. That way if I see anything or if I hear anything, if I look over to my computer within 3 seconds, I can exactly nail that frequency and just get rid of it, you know.
Your own mics?
Yeah, I always use all my own mics. Every band I work for, I bring all my own stuff to, you know, whatever. I got a pretty decent mic selection, so whatever is appropriate for the band. So like when Nate and I got into rehearsals with these guys, I brought a lot of mics out, especially, you know, vocal mics and different drum mics and stuff, and I tend to use the same stuff. It's 91A on the in, D6 on the out, Telefunken M80 on top, Neumann 102 on the bottom, toms or D4s. I mic the bottom of the floors, so those are Heil PR48. A little bit of everything. I use a 57 on the hi-hat. I use Rode NT1s for overheads. And that's about it.
What about lead vocal?
Lead vocals, all the vocals are Heil PR35s. Yeah, they're just incredibly stable. I mean, they're just insanely stable. You can just, it's got like 40 dB of off-axis rejection or something like that. So when you sing into the side of it, it just disappears. And we don't have a lot of stage volume. We have none. It's everything is direct except for the drums and the vocals. So
that's nice.
But it still helps. You know, I could probably use something a little more open, but it works for these guys. So, and we bought about 15 of them, so I figured I'd use them. So yeah, we're taking like 46, I think, from stage. 46 inputs from stage. We have a pretty cool comm system going on. So every position has their own talkback on opto gates. So any band member, even if they're in the middle of playing something, can just walk up to a mic. The mic opens up. They can communicate with each other. That's how they communicate with me. This is just comms coming at me from every band member.
So you hear everything?
Yeah, I mean, during the show, I tend to try not to hear it. I'll turn it down just loud enough so if my monitor engineer needs my attention, I can hear it. And then, yeah, so we're pretty much every input from the stage end. We're like 46. Then we got the 2 audience mics, it takes us to 48. And then locally, I've got my iPod inputs, guest desk inputs, so left, right, sub for the guests, and then my effects returns. And that is it. Every single channel is full. And every output is full. Same with Nate. Nate will go through. He's got a pretty cool situation set up that I don't even understand how he does it. Maybe you will. But it's basically like he's got it set up so no matter what mix he's on, he can always hear me and he can always hear the comms. So whether he's on his cue, whether he's on an artist mix, doesn't matter where he is on his desk, we always have constant communication, which is hugely helpful. Like if I hear something take off, you know, I could just instantly talk to him. Hey bro, was that you? Was that me? What's going on? I'm way in the back of the room, I don't know. And it's cool having that kind of communication, you know.
It's very cool.
Eats up a bit of inputs, but whatever. Worth it. We got enough, you know.
And what do you like about you've been a Midas guy for a while?
Yeah. I mean, they just sound wicked, you know, and it's like the price of these things now, it's like you can buy an M7 or you can buy this thing. Like, what would you buy? You know what I mean? I probably shouldn't say that, but, you know, for the price of these things, it's the rental price, they're great. Every desk has their little issues and problems, but it's a computer, you know. Knock on wood, we've been super lucky. Everything's been cruising, you know, nothing's really been going wrong at all.
Cool. Did you mention it was a Pro 2? I forget.
This is a Pro 2, Midas Pro 2.
Cool. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
I use them all, really.
What piece of advice would you give to somebody who's just getting into it, to get noticed, to get ahead?
I mean, that's kind of a hard question. I mean, if you want people to help you, you need to help yourself too. You know what I mean? Like, you need to be a proactive person and not expect that you're going to get behind a desk immediately. Lately, this has kind of become like a glorified thing to do. You know, everybody wants to be an engineer, but there's basically like troubleshooting skills and things that you need to learn. You know what I mean? Because when everything goes wrong, if you don't have that experience, and that means like from building a cable to understanding what a one-legged cable sounds like, to understand, you know, point A to point B. When something goes wrong, how are you gonna fix that? That's my biggest piece of advice I can get anybody. It's like, just work. Don't, you know, just experiment. If you get time behind a desk, experiment. That's what I do. I just sit on Pro Tools with a snare drum and I do this and I do this and I do this and it sounds pretty cool and maybe I can accomplish that here. But not knowing the fundamentals of audio, it will bite you in the ass so hard, man, because when it goes wrong, your artist is going to expect you to fix it immediately. And if you don't, you'll be trying to find a new job, you know. I had a great like mentorship when I first started getting into this, you know. It was like I worked at a studio in New York, and the guy, I wasn't even allowed in the control room for like 4 or 5 months. And then when I was allowed in the control room, it was just to zero out and restore the console, basically, after a session. And then the next day I'd come in and the guy would go like, so what's the difference between this module and this module, and the EQ curves, and it was a really awesome learning experience, you know, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to touch anything until I knew what I was doing to a certain extent. Yeah, I mean, get with a production company, you know, find a band that's young and is willing to take you out, or go to a production company and just start learning how to coil cable and learning how to build XLR. And then, you know, that's why a lot of these guys that stay with these production companies for 15, 20 years, because they got a great education, and then they're plopped into like serious gigs, you know. You see guys that have been with like Claire and Eighth Day and stuff for like 20 years, and they're mixing the biggest artists in the world, and they work for one company. It's because they got a proper education, you know. I learned on the road, so it took me a bit longer, probably, but things are working out now, I guess.
Awesome.